Okay, so my name's Jon Eldon. Well, I'm a lecturer here in SPIA. I teach soils, some forest ecology, various kind of applied environmental science type stuff. As much as I can, I'd like to get out to places like the campus farm here and to get the students engaging with what it actually looks like. My background, studied ecology and a few other things, and grew up in Oregon, moved out to Hawaii for a while and kind of bounced around. Ended up moving into more kind of applied ecology, less of the theoretical questions and more of the let's do something with it. And eventually, kind of the long way, got into soils and kind of agronomy type, agricultural research. I grew up around agriculture in the Willamette Valley in Oregon is where I grew up. It was the end of the Oregon Trail. It's what people trekked across the country in covered wagons to get to. So beautiful farm country. And when I was a kid, my dad had a produce market back in the 80s. Is kind of organic and local and all those things are getting started. And so he had a big role with that. And then when that closed, he started running the farmer's market for one of his suppliers. He's been doing that for 20 years. So I grew up more on the sales and marketing and distribution side of produce. So I grew up around it enough, did 4-H and all that. So there was no romanticism about agriculture. There was no get my hands in the dirt. It was more like, let's get out of here. So I got more into kind of the theoretical sides of ecology, evolutionary biology, and actually it was in the Pacific that I got back into agriculture. So how do you live on a small island for 1,000 years without depleting your resources? Not an obvious question, and there's a lot of ways to do it. And the Pacific is full of actually really cool examples of how do people manage an ecosystem to support themselves. So that question is what got me to where I am now, where I work with corn and beans and live in the Midwest. My focus when I was working abroad, so kind of remote parts of South Pacific and then West Africa, was more, not subsistence, but more kind of hand-to-mouth agriculture, you might say. What's been kind of fun of going from taro in the South Pacific to millet and peanut in Africa to corn and beans here, a lot of the problems are the same. And that's going from a very low input where all you have is a stick to work with, a dibble stick or a digging stick, to all the tillage equipment you can imagine. A lot of the problems are the same, and a lot of the ways you work with soil is the same. The way you work with farmers. I draw a lot on particularly my African work in how I engage with people here. There's very strong parallels. I never tell anybody what to do. I'm not gonna go on a farm and say, oh, your soil is this, you should do this. I might say, oh, have you tried this? Or can I help you try this? Or like in Africa, let's try 20 things and see what works. But the idea that as a scientist, I can somehow say what's going to work or what's right or what's the best practice, as they say, not a chance. I don't know any of that. And honestly, I know the soil science, but there's a lot of knowledge that is in, a farmer's kind of learned experience that I'll never have and that isn't in a textbook. I used to travel 3 days by plane and boat to get to really ugly, acidic clay on top of limestone, and now I got it in my backyard. Same problems. When I did my garden in my backyard, I was using ideas that I learned from an illiterate farmer in the South Pacific. So, I initially got into soil because if you want to make a difference to an ecosystem, you got to think about the soil, and a lot of our ecosystems are heavily managed or influenced. I mean, they stripped, 4 or 5 feet of soil off, and we're trying to farm with something that hasn't seen the sun in a million years. It's amazing. We're doing it, but knowing that we're dealing with terrible clays to begin with gives us a leg up of how to actually do that. So part of the interest in soil, part of why I moved from Drosophila and ecology and agroforestry into just, let's measure some soil texture, let's do some pH, and let's talk corn and beans. That's not an obvious route. Part of it is just, this is how you get things done. But the other reason that I've come to focus so much on soil is, I think of soil as kind of a language. And it's a language that almost everybody on Earth speaks a little bit of. You know, out of the almost 8 billion people, 7 billion of them have intimate understanding of soil. So I've learned more from farmers than I've shared with them, no question. I've learned more from farmers with no education at all than I've shared with them. I've been able to have conversations about soil with people whom I don't share a language, but we can talk soil, and it's clear that we are having a conversation even if our language is soil. And that has been so powerful. We can have nothing else in common, and we can get our hands dirty. We can have a conversation. It doesn't matter all the other differences on paper. We've got something in common. And what's so fun about soil is that, you know, old weathered acidic clay in Indiana, old weathered acidic clay in the Solomon Islands. I could bring a farmer from there here, and he would be right out there working. There are not a lot of things that allow for it. It seems like everybody's looking for reasons to divide and to say we have nothing in common, us and them, you know. In terms of finding things you have in common with somebody, if you know a little bit of soil, you can go anywhere in the world and talk to anybody. That's my experience. You can talk to a 5-year-old kid out on a farm in rural anywhere, Bangladesh, Senegal, Indiana, and they will be able to tell you something about, oh yeah, this soil, you know, it's really compact over here, but it's really easy to pull weeds over there. To me, that is just something really special. The fact that I could go into any rural house in the world and I immediately have something in common with them, something we can talk about even if we don't have words for it, and that's cool.